you and I talked about this, and there is, she passed away, I want to say in 2005 or 2006, a woman, remarkable woman, Oriana Fallaci, Italian journalist. In her childhood, she served in the underground against the Nazis in World War II. Really, just a prolific career. But she was, to be clear, an atheist, hard left person, right? So it's not like this is, you can't say, that's like calling Bill Maher, a hard right person, right? It's just, I mean, so. She has, and her background is she was a journalist, and she was noted for. I mean, she interviewed she only woman who ever interviewed the Ayatollah Khomeini, not once but twice, and had the temerity to pull off the chador. And he walks out of the first interview. He goes back to, and she tries to get a second interview, and he said, "Fine, only if you don't talk about the chador." And second interview, she goes right at it again, and actually. I mean, this is who she is. Interviewed Kissinger, Yasser Arafat, the Prime Minister of Germany. I mean, the people. So this is a world-renowned author, journalist, I would say activist, socialist for her early years. So she writes many books, but two in particular. One of them is this one, which is called The Rage and the Pride. This was which she wrote right after September 11th, which she basically says that Islam is incompatible with the West. The values are incompatible. Now, look, I'm not making that judgment. That's for other people to make, but she was excoriated as a racist. And basically, though, what she says, which I think, bears, let me bring out some quotes here, is that there's an incompatibility between Islamic world and the Western world, and the global reality of the jihad and lack of response, and the leniency of the West, our blindness, our deafness, our masochism, the conformism, and the arrogance of the politically correct. Right? Which is, right? Barack Obama. That's where you start with. So, 20, 30 years ago, she's prophesizing, and it wasn't really a prophecy. It was really a rant, of which I know about rants. So I like to rant. And here we are 20, 30 years later, and you have in Germany, you have them protesting not just for the death of Israel, but they're protesting because they want to bring around something called the third caliphate. So, Ericka?
Yeah.
I'm throwing too much at you. I know it's one of those days.
I didn't hear a question in there. I thought that
there wasn't a question. I just want.
Oh, okay.
Am I supposed to ask you a question?
Well, I don't know. I was just listening. Am I supposed to comment on the lady who died or the caliphate part?
Either one. I'm told I have to go to my right. Move to your right, young man.
Yeah, move to your right. So you're off center.
Am I in right now?
No.
You want me more to the right?
You
more to my right.
Yeah, you're right. Yes.
I have to be centered. Oh, I thought it was your right. Okay.
Yes, you're right.
By the way, Ericka, you're right. It's a secret to a successful marriage, right? You're right, Ericka.
That's right, baby. Ow! No, I think we live in a very scary time, and I think what's sort of interesting about it, particularly as a Christian, is listening to all of the end times prophecies that are going on and people are talking about. We've got the red calves being brought to Israel to slaughter, to rebuild the temple for the third time or whatever it is. And it's, I just watched something the other day and this guy's like, actually, the temple's already been rebuilt a third time based on this information. And what I think is so fascinating is the Bible says you will not know the time or the place, right? Like God tells us we're not going to know, as a Christian, we're not going to know when Jesus is coming back. He's just going to come back. And yet everybody's out there being like, I figured it out though. Even though God told me I wouldn't be able to figure it out, I know that this is what's happening. And I think that all of that conversation just raises the temperature and gets everybody lathered up even more. And I almost feel like it's helping push us towards a worse outcome. You know, like if people weren't just expecting the end of the world to come, would they still behave in the same way?
Well, I'm not
That's my
sure people
question.
who are expecting the end of the world to come are the ones that are protesting on college campuses,
Um,
right? I think, look, I
well,
think
that's
this
not
is
who I'm talking about, but
no, I understand, but I want to
Mhm.
stay connected to sort of, you know, the current events of all of this, because yeah, I mean, obviously if you're, you know, working within the faith communities, depending on which faith community you're talking about, there, you know, there are those concerns and conversations, but before you even get to that, you have to see what's going on through a clear lens, which is this is not just about the Jews. It's not just about Israel. It's not just about the United States. This is a class of cultures, right? And the
Mm.
question, you know, for debate, I guess, is the Islamic culture compatible with Western values?
Oh, no, absolutely not. Anybody
Right.
who
And
questions that is an absolute fool.
well, but I mean, you know, under the heading of being hoisted on your own petard, right, or being exploded by your own bomb, it's using the Western liberal leniencies, if you will, against
Mhm.
us, right? Yeah, whether that's the southern border, whether that's immigration, whether that's multiculturalism, as we've talked about, because one of the things that's supposed to happen when you migrate into a country is you're supposed to become part of that country. And yet
Mhm.
now we're seeing that demographics really is destiny, especially
Mhm.
when you are not becoming part of a country. And then you um, can use that to go after the youth to sort of move or transform society. And that's the issue here. The problem is people are apathetic.
I mean, I think that's part of it, but it's also I don't know, there's so many layers to this. You figure everybody it's not just Christians who think the end of the world is coming. All
Who else
these
does?
young people think the end of the world is coming because of climate change. There is this
So it's a nihilistic
it's
kind of.
that's what it's everything. It's just everything is the end of the world. Everything is terrible. Everyone is a victim. Everyone is oppressed. Everyone is looking for someone to blame for their problems. And so, I mean, this just feels, honestly, to me, this is a natural progression of the nonsense we've been seeing over time. The Jewish people are disproportionately successful. And remember, you're white now, according to them. So you are the Jews are the
Unless of course you're a Sephardi Jew, in which case you're not white, then you're a person of color and a Jew.
not if you're successful, because anybody who's successful is white, even if you're Hispanic or any of that other
Really?
nonsense.
And
I
what
mean,
if you're what if you're an Ethiopian Jew?
I mean,
Are you still white? Are you still
also
white?
white now, because Ethiopians are
Come
super
on.
successful. I'm telling you, this is all
Come
part
on.
of the victim
So
oppression
wait a minute.
Olympics.
So skin color matters until it doesn't?
Correct. I mean, that's their beliefs. So this is just with all of the other conversations about, white people are inherently racist and all this other stuff. Palestinians are the oppressed and Israelis are the successful oppressors, and they're white and whiter than the Palestinians who are browner, and therefore, ergo, henceforth, this
I
is
don't think
this is
so.
the justification. And
I think you're correct about oppressed versus oppressor, but I don't think it has to do with the color of their skin, because I don't think there's that much difference when you sort of look at them. You know, if you line them all up, right?
but that's
In a
where
line.
you're trying to be reasonable and rational, Robert. I'm not talking about a
No, I'm not trying
reasonable
to be.
person.
I'm not trying to be reasonable at all. I'm
But
trying to
it's the same
understand.
thing. Black people are inherently oppressed. Anybody who's brown or unsuccessful, they're oppressed. And it's somebody else's fault. And we have to look for whose fault it is. So, of course, Palestinians being oppressed, it must be Israel's fault. It can't be the fact that they support Hamas. It can't be the fact that they made these decisions to just not live in peace with their neighbors. It can't be their own fault. It has to be someone else's fault. And so this campus insanity, again, it's just a progression of all the rest of it we've seen. The climate hysteria, the Black Lives Matter.
It's not a progression. It's a plan. That's what you need to understand. This is planned. This is paid for. Now it's not planned,
but a progression. Do you think they could have gotten away with this 8 years ago? Do you think they could have gotten away with this in 2008?
In 2008, which actually would have been 16 years ago, but okay.
My point is, it is a progression. It is, it is
progressing, and these are progressive values.
Okay.
Right.
I mean,
so I get, and look, I'm not fighting with you, at least not quite yet. Right. I'm just telling you that you need to not, we need to not lose sight of the fact that, yes, it is progressing. Yes, it is progressive. But the key here is that A, it's planned and paid for. And B, the bigger picture is people think it's just about the Jews, and it's not. It's about Judeo-Christian values. It's about Western values. And you're talking about exterminating a people, right? A la Adolf Hitler, right? The final solution, right? And therefore, you're talking about a third caliphate, which is what they're now starting to say. Certainly in Germany, they've been saying it. And again, let's remember, the second caliphate was the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire lost in World War. And by the way, the second caliphate was, 400 years, 500 years of Ottoman rule, right? I don't exactly know. I mean, I can look up the dates, but and maybe Lord Benjamin can look up the dates for us. But when you're talking about Sharia law and you're talking about driving the Jews into the sea, there's a nexus here. And the only reason I bring up someone like Oriana Fallaci, right, is because it's not like we weren't warned. It's not like we didn't see this coming, right? And I do want to read the other quote from her book, and this is from The Force of Reason. By the way, The Rage and the Pride was written after 9/11, but after that, she got a massive amount of blowback on this, right?
Yeah. Did you ask the dates of the Ottoman Empire, or did the dates of the Intifadas?
The dates of the Ottoman Empire.
1285 to 1923. Okay,
so more than 400 years, 600 years, 650 years, right? So they're calling for another caliphate, right? Another basically religious government to run the world. That's what they're talking about. I know it sounds far-fetched, but let me go back to Fallaci. So she says that they have devised subtle and insidious ways to go after the soul, right? With the help of newspapers, TV, public schools, colleges, and universities. Nailed that. They have developed a diabolical technique in which it is no longer necessary to engage in debate with those who disagree with their own party line. It is enough simply to destroy the public character of their opponents, either by outright slander or insinuations of insanity, or worse, to intimidate them into obsequious silence with the threat of criminal charges, thank you, Donald Trump, and even with the threat of death itself. It doesn't get, Ericka, come back, where are you? It doesn't get, Ericka, any more prophetic than that.
Yeah.
I mean, names it all. So
and that's the beauty of written history is that you can see this stuff coming. And it's unfortunate that she, like many other people, just instead of having an honest conversation about what is true and what is so, she had to be demeaned.
Right. And by the way, next show, folks, we're going to talk about Nostradamus, because we're going to go about from one prophecy. I was kidding. Might as well go to another, right? I mean, right. And then we can go to the Quatrains and, what did they really mean by when the eagle meets the bear? Right. 27 years, by the way, World War III is supposed to be last 27 years, and it supposedly ends when the eagle meets the bear. I'll let the listeners figure out who that might be.
All right.
As we move on.
All right.
Oh, is it 5 minutes or 2 minutes?
I'm watching the time. You don't have to worry about when we go to break. That's my job.
Oh, that is okay. All right. Well, I mean, look, folks, look her up. Oriana Fallaci, Fallachi. The two books you really need to read. one is called The Rage and the Pride. And it's not even really a book. It's more like a memoir. It's more like it's a rant, right? And it's the rage and the pride, right? But the force of reason is really where the arguments are made and the understanding of who the enemy is and what you're fighting against. If you value your freedom, if you value Western culture, if you value any of that, time to get up and stand up, because it's coming to a town near you right soon. Right. I have friends in Canada and they're like, your country is crazy. I'm like, it's coming to Canada. If you don't think this is coming to Canada, you guys are nuts. Right.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, they're rolling it out here. So, but I have a question for you. How does all this end with these college protests in your mind? I can't figure it out.
I have no earthly idea. They're demanding that they divest from, beat BDS, the boycott, divest, and sanction movement. And of course, they're all saying, no, we're not going to do that. But they're also requesting amnesty, right? Don't punish me. Right? Don't kick me out of school. Don't punish me. Don't take away my student loans. God forbid. Right. Right.
But so let me ask you a different question, because I'm old. How did the Black Lives Matter protests just all of a sudden end?
You know what? That's actually a really great question. I don't know. They were there. That's a good question.
They sprung up overnight. You know what? I can tell you how they ended.
I bet you there was no more funding.
No more funding, and they accomplished their goal. And so therefore they pulled it back. It's the same thing they're trying to do with Hamas in Gaza, which is, let's have a ceasefire. We've accomplished our mission. And as long as we survive, we can launch another attack, next month, next year, whenever, and continue our drive to exterminate, the Jews and drive them into the sea. It's no different. Black Lives Matter protests dried up when they had damaged Trump enough because, right? And then they pulled back the funding. And then all of a sudden, all these protesters just went away.
And, I love the gal. Can you say her name? I can't pronounce it correctly. The author we've been talking about.
Oriana Fallaci.
Oriana Fallaci.
So you've heard about the Fallaci papers, right?
No.
Which is an organized crime. Joe Fallaci, who turned informant on the mob. They put out, wrote called the Fallaci papers. These are now the Fallaci papers.
Oh, okay.
That was funny. I thought it was funny.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm sorry. I don't know. But one of the things that I thought was really cool that I read that she said, she interviewed a pope, and as you mentioned, she's an atheist, and she said, one of her quotes was, if an atheist and a pope can agree on something, then you probably ought to listen. That was the gist of it. And I thought that was so funny that even an atheist recognized, and these were her words, she recognized the value and importance of a Judeo-Christian Western culture on the world, even though she didn't believe it. And so I just wanted to reiterate what you said about reading her books and checking it out.
She believed it. She didn't believe it came from God. Right. So she was totally vested into Western values, right? Those traditional, let's call them liberalism, the tradition, not liberal by today's standards, but that traditional sort of Western liberalism of free speech and those freedoms. That's what she grew up with. She, like I said, she fought in the resistance against the Nazis in World War II. She just didn't believe they were God-given because she didn't believe in God. But she was an ardent defender at the end of the day of these Western values, and saw, I think she quoted Diderot that basically said, Islam is contrary to reason or something like that. I mean, Lord Benjamin, look up Diderot's comment about Islam, right? And I'm not defaming Islam, I'm just telling you that, multiculturalism and values don't always mesh together, right?
Yeah. So we'll get that quote back when we come back from hearing from the defenders of American freedom.